All right, down 3-0. The Avalanche rattle off 6 straight goals and beat the Stars 6-3 in the biggest game of the season. Early, but it's still the biggest game of the season so far. We'll talk about that on a brand new episode of Locked On Avalanche.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, the smiling Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure to follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And make sure to follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure to subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that is in the show notes below. When you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, become one of our very special insiders, and get your opinions that we read on the air, like we will later on the whole Patrick Kane Avalanche possibilities. So we'll get to that a little bit later. Where we are definitely going to start today, Kyle, is obviously with that game over the weekend. Avs and Stars, big game. A lot of fanfare going into this one between the two fan bases. Clearly, these are the top two teams in the division. You expect these to be the top two teams in the division. Where they end up, we obviously have to wait and see. But going into this one, both teams feeling good. Obviously, Dallas has been playing well since the beginning of the season. The Avalanche, more recent, the last 2 games, they were playing very well. So they wanted to continue that. And there's a lot to kind of like break down here. For the Avs, it kind of got off to one of those, I'll say, bad starts in terms of the score.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were playing that bad, but it was another case of one team capitalizing on chances and the other team not. And then and that team being the Avalanche, and then when that team being the Avalanche turned it around, it was just like the Stars just could not stop the bleeding. And it's 6 straight for the Avs, and they win the thing 6-3. Very good game.
And I liked how you say this is the biggest game of the year so far for the Avs. And you could say that in hindsight, but I think this is a continuation of what used to be the biggest game for the Avs, and that was their matchup versus the Golden Knights, where they got absolutely embarrassed. And you saw that, how the Avalanche learned from that public embarrassment. And you saw the first 3 goals, that first period. It was one of those that felt almost, you cross your eyes. I know it's hard to blend the two because the highlighter jerseys and the gold jerseys of the Knights are nowhere similar, but it started out the same way. Like the Avalanche they looked okay. It just wasn't tallying on the scoreboard. And then that second period, Dallas comes out and tallies another goal. And you're like, this is great. We're good against average teams, but the best teams in the league, the best in the Central and the Western Conference, the Avalanche can't match up. But you see where they learned in that Vegas Golden Knights experience. And 6 unanswered? Well, let's say 6.5, the empty netter from Colton at the end.
5.5,
5.5.
Yeah.
So but it's exactly what you want to see. This was a 40-minute game for the Avalanche, but they learned from that Golden Knights experience, and you could see that in periods 2 and 3.
Then they all said it too after the game. They basically said, when we got down 3-0 in Vegas, they stopped. Not that they didn't stop playing, they stopped playing their game.
Yep.
And you heard that from so many guys saying, like, just we were down 3-0, but we didn't stop playing our style of game. And I think that's that's easier said than done, first of all, but it's the smart thing to do. It's obviously has worked for you the past however many seasons. And if you took a step back and looked at it, like I said, you were playing fine. You just had to capitalize on plays.
Yep.
And even in that first, you had Miles Wood ring one off the crossbar. So that could have cut into the lead, and that would have made you feel good a little bit earlier. But you get the one, and man, like individual performances, we'll get into that a little bit later. But this was, like I said, like once they got back into the game, and it was 3-1 and even 3-2. It was a great second period, and I put up on X that this was that third period was just they completely took control of everything in that game, everything. And they figured out like what to do defensively. They didn't give Dallas some high danger shots. Georgiev just had to settle down, which he did. He kept the score right where it was. You always give your team the ability to come back once you do that. But I thought defensively they were phenomenal in that third period. Absolutely phenomenal. Didn't lose track of their guys. Like I said, difficult shooting lanes. Everything just I think Dallas had 5 shots on goal in the third. Where I don't have it. I'm pretty sure it's 5. I'll bring it up. But it was a masterclass in making adjustments that work on the defensive end, and on the offensive end. Things just start. They have that mindset of, if we just keep plugging along, the game is long enough. They jumped out. It's not like they got a 3-0 lead like in the third. It was 0-0 and they got a 3-0 lead in the third. There's so much of this game left. And if we can just keep playing our game and not stray from that, they all have faith that it will come around. And you saw it happen right in front of your eyes. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
And not only did the Avalanche come back in a fantastic way, 6 unanswered, but the sequence of events was, it felt like a perfect combo in a video game. Like I think it's very hard to dispute right now, but the heart and soul of this Colorado Avalanche team, it could lie with Miles Wood. He is just a battery. It's between him and Ross Colton.
Well, the whole third line, you could say now, is what's making this team go.
And for Miles Wood to be the one to get things going again, the Avalanche are on the board. And then goal number 2 was Ryjo on the power play. Ryjo hasn't scored in a while. And on the power play, that was also huge. And what equalized that score? Valeri Nichushkin against Dallas.
Yeah.
It was like seeing Nuke come back for a equalizer. That's what you want to see. Against the former team, it's always a little bit sweeter.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, you're like, we're back, baby. Let's go. And then they just kept pouring it on. And that's what you want to see. You couldn't have written it up any better than they did, but that's what you want to see. You're coming back. Ryjo on the power play. So that's working. That was the only real conversion of the night, but something on the power play, and then Nuke, the equalizer. And then from there, forget about it.
Well, the goal from Miles Wood, it was challenged. And the refs did not have a good night.
No.
We don't like to really nitpick on the refs too much here because it's just too easy to do. But when there was some just absolutely putrid calls or non-calls going on in this game early on, and the Avs were down 3-0, and you have the Miles Wood goal, DeBoer challenges it, and it's one of those things where you're sitting there like, the way that this game is going for everything for the Avalanche right now, from Dallas jumping on them 3-0 to some blatant and brutal no calls, they're going to overturn this thing.
Yeah.
I had it in the back of my mind like it was going to get overturned, and then it didn't. So that gets them on a power play, and they could have had a 5-on-3. They should have had a 5-on-3 during that power play. I don't know what some of these 2 obvious calls. One that went against Colton, didn't go against Colton, and then when they had that power play after the challenge, a clear as day trip on Nathan McKinnon that does not get called. And again, at this point in time, it's still 3-1. So you're just frustrated as an Avs fan because nothing seems to be going your way. Yeah, you got they didn't reverse the call on Wood, but I think this speaks to this team kind of just buying into their play style. And okay, we're not getting the calls. Okay, like we can't. There were so many. That's just adding on to the pile of why they could have gone the way of Vegas because, Dallas jumped out on them. They're not getting calls. And it could have went that route again, but they learned from that game.
Yeah.
They learned from that Vegas game. Like, look what happens when we do that. We get blown out of the arena. So let's not do that. It's not going our way. And let's just methodically start to figure things out. And they did. And it was, 6 straight is just, you don't see that hardly ever. And you really don't see that when you're the visiting team in Dallas.
Exactly. And you always talk about home cooking, and it's one of those things to come back with 6 goals. And you mentioned like the correlation between the Golden Knights game and the Dallas Stars game. Like with the refs being so bad, I will never complain about refs. I hate that being a factor of the game. If I can't buy a referee jersey on Fanatics because they license everybody nowadays, they're not a factor. It's just the equivalent of like fast or slow ice. It's just something you have to work over. And if the Avalanche being down 3-0 with the refs being a factor in that game with their calls and their quality, it's just something you have to overcome. And the Avalanche did not let that affect them. And you saw Mikko on the bench kind of taunting one of the refs. Like it just was something they had to overcome. It was an additional thing in the game. And for the Avalanche to do that 6 straight, it speaks a lot to this victory going forward.
I can sit here and complain about the refs, and then what do the Avalanche do? They have a literal 5-on-2 break and don't even get a shot off. Like I just threw my hands up in the air like, oh boy, it's gonna be one of those games. So yeah, we can complain about the refs, but that's inexcusable too, Colorado Avalanche. All right. So as far as individual performances and things like that, and is this that galvanizing victory that the Avalanche really needed? I mean, I feel like they've been playing fine, but considering the opponent and what you did, is this kind of like what you can look back on and say, hey, remember what we did? Let's get back to playing like that. We'll discuss that here in a second. Right now, we're going to talk about eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, we call that the Nathan McKinnon trilogy. eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Avalanche your first listen of the day. We always appreciate that. We do want to let you know about Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 coverage, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel over on YouTube. Pretty cool over there. So, all right. So let's talk about it as just as a victory. And pretty sure it was Andrew Cogliano that said after the game, this is the type of game that you look back on. You have those ups and downs throughout the season, which, oh, by the way, the Vegas Golden Knights are going through right now, everybody. You're going to have that throughout the course of a very long season. And he said it. He was like, this is the type of game that you look back on and say, let's remember what we did then. Remember, we might be down right now, but remember what we did then. Let's get back to doing it. We've done it before. We can do it again. So, yeah, I think you're getting to the part of the season where you're hitting, like, the early stages of the season are coming to an end, right? We're a month and a half into the season now. So by the end of November, you want to be hitting some sort of stride. And I think the Avalanche, with these last 3 games anyway, might be hitting that stride at a good time, because that's what you want. You want to start getting your flow going and it seems like it happened mid-game for them anyway. So we'll see where it goes from here. But yeah, I think it definitely can be this galvanizing win.
Absolutely. And we were talking about that after the 6 straight wins to start the season, and then just the up and down weirdness that came after it. We were talking about good individual efforts, just not a team effort. This team, they believe in what they have right now. Like the top line, they know they're out there if needed. They're not needed to win every game.
Hold on.
No, Nathan McKinnon did not score a goal in that Dallas game.
No, but he had he had nothing. I thought he had an assist in that game. Okay.
He's not needed.
Right.
So
no, but you can't say it like that, man, because they are needed. They are very much needed.
Rewind to 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. That's all you had was that 3-headed monster. And then you had Gabe and Renee Bork. You had insert your favorite non-Avalanche player that is not on the roster anymore. Like that's used to be, if you won a game, Nate had 1, Gabe had 1, Mikko had 2. You don't have to have those kind of games anymore. You can have LOC getting shorthanded goals. You can have Ross Colton, Miles Wood going off. Ryjo's starting to settle back in on the power play. He's finding his, and then you can mix and match with the fourth line. Some nights the fourth line is potent. Defense, Sammy G's finding his stride, and then you got Cale McCard, Taser. Like the way I would phrase that is the top guys are kind of allowed to have an off night. Yes,
that's how I would phrase it. Because they're your go-tos, right? They're going to be your go-tos.
You remember the nights that Nathan McKinnon would be hurt after Taylor Hall caved his nose in, and we're sitting there. Oh, how many more days until Nathan McKinnon comes back? How many more days until Landeskog comes back? Oh, Mikko's out. Oh, and we're counting the days. Nathan McKinnon had nothing, and how many of us are losing their mind? Oh, what's going on with Nathan McKinnon?
Yeah,
is this Avalanche team going to be? No, you are confident top to bottom and what this team could do night in, night out. If a team wants to overmatch up on line 1, line 2, 3, and 4 are going to make you hurt. If you want to play top to bottom, the defense is going to make you hurt. And now with Georgiev really improving over letting 4 goals in on a regular basis, like he's looking solid back there. So the Avalanche are believing in this roster construction, and instead of individual efforts, you're getting team efforts, and you could see they could take the momentum from being down 3-0 on the road and answering 6 goals and walking out the victor.
And what I think they want to do, though, is say, like, okay, like, yeah, it's fine if – well, it's not fine, but if Mikko Rantanen, they scored 8 the other day and he had nothing. Okay, well, they scored 8. So, I like, how you're saying it is, I get that. But what they want is all of that clicking.
Yes,
because then they're just unbeatable. Right now, it's like, okay, like everyone's going out and you're expecting the hierarchy to kind of play out the way that it does. If it doesn't, okay, third line's been rolling lately, so they could carry a bigger load. That's fine. But if everything starts, and it's not to say that, Nathan McKinnon, like he's doing Nathan McKinnon things this year. He's having a great season.
Exactly.
But if he just has a game like he did against Dallas, which he played fine, just doesn't score up show up on the score sheet. Okay, because just look at how they play defense.
Yep.
Look at what that third line is doing. That third line is just, we don't talk about it enough. Ross Colton is, full disclosure, the jersey's ordered. It's on its way. I can't wait to get that thing because I love watching that guy play. No, they're starting to, the individual things are starting to click, and good Lord, if they all click together, it's just going to be, now on that top line. Yeah. We did talk about Val Nichushkin scoring that 1 goal. I don't know if this was because it's his former team. And I'm sure there's a percentage in there that will always be stuck with him whenever he plays Dallas. He kicks it up a little bit. But man, was he in charge.
Yes.
On Saturday. That was like, everything was great about that third period. But Val Nichushkin was one of those guys, when, Nathan McKinnon or Cale McCarr they're just cruising and they're noticeable. That was Val Nichushkin.
Yeah.
He was just so fun to watch, and they had no answer for him. Dallas doesn't hit you. I put it up as our 3 keys to the game. They have the fewest hits in the league. They just let you skate around, and you cannot do, like, they have good sized body guys, but they won't hit you. They could not move Nichushkin off of the puck at all. It just when you can't do that, and because that's his game, is a power game, and he'll come in on that right side, and he'll just one arm you to give you the one arm shiver and do whatever he wants to do. He was doing that all game long. They had no answer for him.
Yeah, the Avalanche out hit the Stars 22-17, and you could feel it with that momentum shift. The Avalanche were the more physical team. It was the last time that you had to say that about an Avalanche team. Like, they're more of a finesse, high power team. When are they the most physical team? And guess what? The surprising factor, even with a momentum shift, the Avalanche lost the faceoff. Like,
what was that? What was the faceoff percent?
It was
probably terrible.
It was 60-40, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And Dallas is a very, very good faceoff team. Very good faceoff team.
So it was one of those, like, even the weakest part of the Avalanche did not end up being a Achilles heel for this team. And they're still operating like this without Arturi Lehkonen. Also keep that in mind. Like, they still have the injury bug on their back, and they're putting together these type of victories. It's a wonderful thing to see right now.
I think the big moment for the Avalanche was killing that 5-on-3 that Dallas had. And then, because that's, it could have gotten way out of whack if they had scored even once on that 5-on-3. Would have made it 4-0. But they killed it. And then that, that can galvanize a team just in the game, is killing a penalty like that. So they did. They got rid of that penalty, and then that's kind of when it started, taking off a little bit for the Avs. So that was, if you're talking about like a singular moment, could have been that. But you had, like I said, Georgiev settled down. You had, and then, just the 2 goals 11 seconds apart.
Yeah.
Between Rantanen to give them the lead. So you're already on just cloud 9 because you just clawed all the way back to take this lead, and then there's a face off, and 11 seconds later Cogliano gets another one. It was, just kids jumping in my living room is like what I looked like after the Cogliano goal.
It's one of those, like you mentioned, like the game is one of those that you're going to point back to. I think that 11-second stretch between Mikko and Cogs is going to be one of those things of an instant just fire up the team moment. And I think this is something they're going to replicate. Like, you have Nashville coming up in Nashville, a Rijo return for Nashville. This is those the little connections, these kind of moments, like quick scoring, depth scoring. You're going to rely on these moments going deeper in the season, and you can do it. You just did it against the best in the Central.
Yeah. And then one final thing I want to bring up is, you're down 3-0. And I think many coaches will force the issue and roll that top line out there over and over and over again. You look at the time on ice, it's kind of exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Nobody was under 10 minutes. Nobody. So even down 3-0, everybody's saying they stuck to the game plan. Yeah, they did in terms of the players on the ice, sticking to that game plan. So did the coaching staff. Say, no, like, it's going, like, the score is not indicative of how we're playing. So they did. They kept rolling all 4 lines out, and because all 4 lines were giving you something. So yeah, it was just, you stick to it. You stick to it, and you see how it ends up in the end. And then if it doesn't end up the way you want, it's a coaching moment, it's a teaching moment. But they didn't panic, and it's crazy to think that they didn't panic going up against that team in that building. For not for the division, obviously, but the Stars are still in first by a point. But it was a big game. Nobody panicked. Nobody panicked, and you could see it.
You could see it by, like, rolling line 1 to line 2, line 1 to line 3, line 1 to line 4, having that little option and all of that be potent. I think that's you're going to see a lot more of that deeper in the season.
So you mentioned did all this without Arturi Lehkonen. Does that force the Avalanche into something here with Patrick Kane? So we will discuss that next. Right now, we are going to hear from Sleeper. And is there a better daily fantasy sports app out there than Sleeper, Kyle?
No, not at all.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's a new NHL season, and it brings all sorts of possibilities. Who could hoist the Stanley Cup? Who could score 50 goals? Who can get 150 points? Everybody on the Avalanche, obviously, especially with that third unit running the way that it is. So Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. What players would you take on Monday, Kyle, as the Avalanche face off against Nashville? Is this a Ryjo game just because it's the old team?
We just talked about Nathan MacKinnon having nothing. I do not anticipate that being the story in Nashville.
I think you're right. Nathan MacKinnon, like he's happy they won, but he's like, it would have been nice if I had a point or two up on the board. So maybe he rectifies that against Monday. I agree with you. So all you have to do is pick whether studs like Nathan MacKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given game. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That code is LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So, all right, Patrick Kane, he's out there. He's doing the LeBron James thing, kind of, when he took his talents to South Beach. And there's teams in the mix for him. And you did get news that the Avalanche are one of those teams. How serious they are, I don't know. But it could be one of those things where the Avs are always in a position to at least make a phone call. Right? They are in that position. No matter who's available, you're going to make a call. Or is it they are really invested in this and they could be one of the leading contenders to get him? You're hearing teams like the Maple Leafs and the Sabres. The Rangers, I think, have bowed out, I've heard. So, and there's a couple other teams that are just not... His services are wanted. You know, he's a little bit older now. He is not what he once was, clearly. The Avs don't need him to be what he once was if they wanted to bring him in. But there's baggage there. There is some baggage in different categories for him. So is this something? And then throw in the Arturi Lehkonen thing, and maybe that is what is kind of maybe making the Avalanche become a little bit more of a player than they would be if he being Lehkonen was not injured, and who knows how long he'll be out. What do you think? Is this something that the Avalanche should consider or don't?
All right, I'm just going to be real. No. Why? After this win you saw in Dallas, what do you need from Patty Kane right now? You said he's older. Yeah, he was the number one draft pick in 2007. Before HD television. Like, come on,
Apple One, the first Apple,
yeah,
Apple
we're like,
IIe.
we're walking around with an iPhone 3 at the time. The YouTube app was just a television. Like, come on, like it's right. Patty Kane. That's great. That's wonderful. But you don't. I saw a lot of YouTube comments during the losing streak that the Avalanche had, and just like the bad losses. That this is a locker room issue. This is a locker room issue. What on God's green earth makes you want to bring Patty Kane in if you think there's a locker room issue?
Yeah.
If he's going to do the LeBron thing, if everybody remembers LeBron, he went to South Beach, then he went back home to Cleveland. If I was Patty Kane, I would try the Rangers and I would take my butt and go right back to Chicago. They'd love you there. Go back and say goodbye to everybody there. I know he was practicing in Toronto. That's great. Yeah. That's wonderful. They need the extra practice. But go back to Chicago.
I don't know if Chicago wants him back. I think Chicago's happy doing what they're doing in this rebuild and making Bedard like the focal point and the superstar in training. Kane would take away from that. So I don't think they want him back. It's funny. We talked about Pierre Lacroix last week and how like he was always trying to make this team better. I'm not saying Patrick Kane would make this team better, but he was always interested in a deal. Even when the team was number one in the standings, he was still making deals. And yeah, and I think I feel like some people, it's so funny how people just have shifts, in the fandom of 2 weeks ago, it was this team is horrible. And now it's like, well, we're playing great. What do we need Patrick Kane for? He's got value on the ice. He has value. He doesn't have the scoring. He's not going to, be a scoring machine for you. He's one of the best passers ever. So he'll help you in if you wanted to put him on either power play, he would help you there. And the Avs do need help on the power play. Let's get real here. So where he would fit in, I mean, you don't have Lekin in there, and who knows for how long. I don't see. I mean, if you're gonna give, I'm blank. Drouin. If you're gonna give Drouin a shot on the top line, Patrick Kane can do that. Patrick Kane can do what Drouin is doing, probably better.
Two things with Patty Kane. At what cost does Patty Kane cost the Colorado Avalanche? And two,
I don't know.
You can't, to the Avalanche fans that are screaming for Patty Kane, you can't also out of the side of your mouth complain about Ryan Johansson being slow and looking like, what is he doing out there? Like, we have Patty Kane at home. His name is Ryan Johansson. Like, it's going to be the same level of production. Like, Patty Kane right now has 12 points, 5 goals, 7 assists. What in the world is that worth throwing the Avalanche into cap hell when all this is possibly over and possibly preventing Lehkonen, if he does heal up, from coming back to the ice because we brought in Patty Kane? Isn't this wonderful? I'd rather have Lehkonen.
Oh my God. No, that's not even a question. It's not about Kane or Lehkonen. It's just, you don't know, you might be without Lehkonen for a while. So I don't know. I threw it out to the subtext people, and I think it's widely panned. Like, they don't want him. Let me go to, I think this is Tanya who put this in here. Yeah. I have a disdain for him that would make it difficult for me to watch games for the first time in Avs history. I want Colorado to nothing to do with him. So, and she didn't give me context there, but you go back to this Kyle Beach situation too. Yep. And I get that. I completely understand it. So, and I'm with her on that.
Yep.
And the Avs usually don't bring in guys who kind of have all this baggage. They did with Nazem Kadri, but he turned his the perception of what he was for the most part. I know a lot of St. Louis Blues fans would disagree with that, but they had a different vibe on Kadri than it's how much will that be a distraction if you bring in Patrick Kane? That is a legit question.
And this close to the Galchenyuk video coming out, you don't want that on top of former Avalanche to new Avalanche, and then just no.
Easton says, why? We're still working out the kinks of all our new assets. And we have Kovalenko coming, the trade deadline in March. And for those that are very hopeful, Landy for the playoffs. All good points. All
Fantastic
good points. I'm excited about Kovalenko. Just pump the brakes on him. It's not like he is going to come in here in March and then just light the league on fire. A lot of these Russian players take time to adjust to the rink size. Yes, he would be. Cost wise, yes, but he's dead on about the trade deadline. If you wanted to get something in the Patrick Kane style of play, you can get that at the trade deadline. And yes, you're hopeful for the playoffs for Landeskog. I don't know if Patrick Kane comes into play for Landeskog anyway, because that's playoffs. Playoffs, all bets are off. You can go over the cap. You can do whatever you want to do. But I get what he's saying. I think it's more of options. Your options are going to be there throughout. You have moments throughout the season where you have options where you don't need Patrick Kane. I kind of totally understand that. And then Vargar kind of went off, and I know that he does not want him. He absolutely hates the idea. He mentions the locker room, doesn't want the negative energy in the locker room, doesn't like the culture that he brings, although I don't think he's walking into a culture. And I don't think he's going to walk into a culture and demand that it change to suit his needs. He's going to have to get in line, and I'm sure if they were going to bring him in, they'd have that conversation with him beforehand. I'm not convinced that he's going to be what he was during his cup runs. He's definitely not, especially after all this time with the Rangers. The thing with the Rangers is he was not healthy. He was not 100% healthy. That obviously goes to show you what.
Stay away from Colorado.
He hasn't played. Yeah, stay away. Yeah, that's a pretty good point. And then it's pretty funny. He says the whole quote, look at him as a kid in the Avs jersey doesn't mean anything. I'm sure hundreds of players around his age also love the Avs. Jonathan Taves' favorite player was Joe Sakic. And that doesn't happen. Players don't just go to what their favorite team was as a kid, but you never know. Maybe if the last couple of years of a player's career, they want to go for who they rooted as a kid. Maybe that happens here. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence that I haven't really given an answer. I'm like half in, half. I want to know more about Lehkonen. If you know Lehkonen is going to be out for a while and you can get Patrick Kane on the cheap, which he's going to have to do, I think you entertain this. And I think the Avs are more of a player than they're really letting it. And the Avs don't put this stuff out there for, people to really know how much they're in, but just a gut feeling, I kind of feel like they are.
It sounds like a lot of advanced work and training videos, and this is how we do things, Patty Kane, for the middle of a season. If this is the off season, this might be a different conversation, but the Avalanche are hitting their stride. The last thing we need to do is teach an old dog new tricks.
We'll see how this ends up. It should be soon. Good Lord. I mean, I thought this would be over by Thanksgiving. So we got a couple days here, Patrick Kane.
That could also be a sign.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Avs back in action Monday against the Predators. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow. So thank you for tuning in, making Locked On Avalanche your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. For Mr. Kyle Sullivan, Shaggy Von Doom, I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.